Okay, I know I'm probably going to say this every single time that we start a new Torah, but this is a really, really exciting Torah to be doing together. Um, there's no way to undersell this one. This is really something special, something unique, something very transcendent, something which is very high spiritually. And at the same time, it's going to end up being very, very practical, Bezrat Hashem. And we're going to be able to take down really what Rabbi Nachman does is he draws down literally the highest, most elevated secrets of Torah, of creation, of consciousness, and then he brings it down for us so that we can practically experience these things in our life. And this was what the Baal Shem Tov gave us. And Rabbi Nachman was the master of this. So for this Torah that we're starting now, I'm going to say that whoever has been through the first Torah with us together, you're going to really enjoy the second one even more, because there's a tradition amongst Breslov that this is actually connected to the first Torah. And as the Torah goes on, you're going to see the connections very much. And if you haven't, it's fine. You're not going to be behind at all, because we're going to start the lesson together from the beginning. And this lesson is really, it's really emblematic of what Rabbi Nachman stood for and what his mission was. And his main focus in his life and what he was trying to give to the Jewish people is really all in this lesson. And also, we get to start with an amazing story, which everybody loves stories. So instead of movies, we get to have a little tiny trailer clip right now from Rav Chaim Kramer, who gives the introduction to this amazing, amazing, amazing Torah. And it starts like this. There was a follower of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. He was a very big Chassid. He followed him very intensely. He believed in him very much. But he lived in another city. And Rabbi Nachman had just moved to a new city, which is called Zlaplia. And he was going to spend 2 years there before he actually moved to Breslov. And then it became Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. And that's obviously where he gained his huge contingent and became famous. And now, ever since then, we're known as the Breslover Chassidim because of that. But before that, he was in Zlaplia for 2 years. It was pretty much from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. So Rav Shmuel Isaac had a dream. And in his dream, he was in an endless forest. There was no end to this forest, and he was walking, and he saw a very large man carrying a very large sword. And he was terrified of him. But the man asked him if he can come with him. And even though he was scared, he followed him anyway. And as they were walking, they were approaching a very beautiful home. And walking into the home, he wasn't sure whether to approach. And he said to come in. And he said, "Why, what's in there?" He said, "Do you see my very big sword?" He said, "Yeah." So he said, "In this house, there's many swords like mine, except smaller." So he brought him into the home. And there was an old man waiting in the home. And he stopped Shmuel Isaac. And he told him, "You cannot have any of these swords unless you have first achieved 2 things. One is that you have no pagam, you have no barrier or blemish in the area of sexual purity. Meaning, according to the laws of the Torah, that you have achieved a very high level of mastery in the area of what we're going to speak about, which is the Brit. And on top of that, you need to make sure you know how to use the sword. So if you have achieved purity in the area of the Brit, and you have figured out how to use the sword, then you can have one of these swords." And as Rav Shmuel Yitzchak was approaching, all of a sudden the old man came screaming and he said, "You can't come in. You can't come in. You have to leave." Because there was dark clouds that surrounded him. And he said that you're not ready to have one of these swords yet. You have to leave. And as he was leaving dejected, the old man told him, but if you go further in the forest, there is another beautiful home. And in that home, there is a master craftsman. There is a person who sharpens these swords. And if you merit it, ... But who knows if you'll even make it in the door. Okay? So this is the story of Rav Shmuel Yitzhak Isaac. And as soon as he woke up, his first inclination was, I have to go tell Rabbi Nachman about this dream, because this is a crazy dream. And he was disturbed by it. He woke up shaken. He didn't know what it was about. It was a very intense dream. So he felt like he had to go tell Rabbi Nachman. The thing is that Rabbi Nachman had just moved to Zlaplia. So even though he was so excited to go and to try and ask him about what this dream was about, as he was going, by the way, this was in the Ukrainian winter, which I don't know if anyone is in Uman for Rosh Hashanah, but Rosh Hashanah is in the summer, and it's still quite cool there at night. And you can only imagine in the winter in Ukraine what that's like. Very, very bitterly cold. Very difficult traveling conditions, even unlike what you'd experience in America in the north. Really, really, really almost impossible. But he decided without thinking about it, he was going to go straight to Zlaplia to see his Rabbi and to tell him about the dream. And as he was going in, he had to go through horse and buggy, and he had to walk to get there. So obviously this probably took a very, very long time. And then by the time he got there, he realized he had no idea where Rabbi Nachman lived, which he only thought about when he walked into the city after traveling and going through torturous conditions to get there. And then he started to ask around, do you guys know where Rabbi Nachman lives? So they said, why do you want to know where Rabbi Nachman lives? They said, don't you know how much controversy there is surrounding him? So at this time, for anybody who doesn't know, Rabbi Nachman, similar to Moshe Rabbeinu, had one very, very big thorn in his side. He had one person who opposed him vehemently. Not opposition like maybe you see somebody comes on YouTube and makes a clip or he just kind of disparages somebody and trying to get them to stop listening or to pay attention to something else or someone else. His opposition was vehement, and it was violent, and it was potentially fatal. So it was very serious, and this is very surprising because this person is actually considered one of the great Hasidic masters who ever lived. And he actually had tremendous love for Rabbi Nachman as he was growing up. But when he moved to Zlaplia, this was the time that this Rebbe, who was named the Shpol Zayd, that he started to develop a tremendous hatred towards him. And he started to tell everybody not to be busy with him at all. So he got there, and then once they started to say to him, to Shmuel Isaac, why do you want to know where he is? And don't you know there's a lot of controversy surrounding him? He immediately thought about his dream where the old man told him, and who knows if you're going to make it? Who knows if you're going to get to his house? And he started to get the chills. So obviously this is a very epic trip for him. And he didn't give up. He was already there. So he starts looking around. He finally found Rabbi Nachman's home, which was new. So he starts knocking on the door. And he doesn't hear anything. And he's knocking and he's knocking and he's knocking. Nothing, 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 nothing. Literally for an hour. So it's not like us, we could take an Uber back home. That was a very intense trip he had to go through to get to his Rabbi. And to come up empty-handed would be very, very, very sour and painful. So finally, he heard a soft voice coming through the window, and it was Rabbi Nachman. And he said, Rabbi Shmuel Isaac, I'm so sorry, but I can't open the door. And he just started to cry hysterically. cried and he cried and he cried and he cried. And finally, Rabbi Nachman said to him, even though it's true that every gate is closed except for the gate of tears, and we know this from the Gemara, that when a person prays to Hashem, even though there are times that, so to speak, the gates are closed, as soon as a Jew prays and he actually tears up and he cries from his heart, those gates are all opened, are all broken open. So he said that even though it's true that those gates are opened through tears, who knows if you're going to make it in? Meaning, Rav Shmuel Isaac realized that Rabbi Nachman knew his dream. That Rabbi Nachman had something called Ruach Kodesh, which we spoke about last night. That similar to the Arizal and similar to the Baal Shem Tov, he was able to know exactly what was going on with someone and what experiences he was having, even without them having been said. And we're going to speak tonight and going forward in this lesson as to how he attained such a level. And actually, Rabbi Nachman says that every Jew can have Ruach Kodesh. So, something to look forward to, Bezrat Hashem, for everyone listening. But because Rabbi Nachman said, who knows if they're going to let you in, he was so awestruck that he completely forgot why he came. I don't know if any of you have ever been like confronted with something that was very awesome and like you quickly forgot everything that you were thinking about for weeks or whatever, trying to prepare for it. This was his experience. He was just in such awe of Rabbi Nachman that he completely forgot why he came. And that Shabbat that was there, a lot of Rabbi Nachman's Hasidim were coming to visit him that Shabbat. So he ended up staying for that Shabbat and hearing Rabbi Nachman's lesson that Shabbat. And that is this Torah. And as this Torah goes on, you're going to see very clearly that every single part of this Torah was describing every part of Rav Shmuel Yitzchak's dream. So this is really just an epic, this is just so epic, you know? So that part alone is very exciting. And then on top of that, after this Torah he learned from Rabbi Nachman, he spent, and by the way, Rav Shmuel Yitzchak was a very, very holy person. He was one of Rabbi Nachman's greatest followers, and he attained very high levels of spirituality, and both in learning and in praying and everything. But after he heard this Torah, he decided to spend the rest of his life working to perfect his prayer, his ability to pray in a way that gets answered. And that might sound familiar to anyone who learned the first Torah with us. So you see a little bit of a connection there. But there's additional elements that are added here that weren't in the first one. Whereas the first Torah, we spoke about the necessity to learn Torah b'koach, with joy and with energy and when it's difficult, in order to have perfected prayer. He's now going to bring the aspect of the Brit, which anybody who's familiar with Rabbi Nachman's teachings knows that he speaks about the Brit probably more than any other concept. And part of the reason is because Rabbeinu understood that for this exile to end and for Mashiach ben David to come, the Jewish people were going to have to rectify this quality of the Brit. And therefore, this is a men's only class. So anyone who came in by accident who's a woman, this may not be for you. And if you want to sneak in anyway, like the great Hasidic followers did and try to catch a peek, okay, you know, I'm not looking, I don't know what's going on. But this is going to be intimate and it's going to be personal, and it has to be. And even though all the Hasidic masters agree how important the Brit is, because it's a Zohar. The Zohar says very clearly that the greatest klipot, even though it's not a Isser Deraita on paper, that it's not something that the Torah literally explicitly says is an Avera, is something that cuts you off from connection to Hashem, like the other negative mitzvot in the Torah. The Zohar and the Oral Torah, the Gemara, make it very clear that this is the most, this creates the most barriers to experiencing the light of godliness in your life, to experiencing transcendence and immanence of the light of the Ein Sof. So we're going to start to see why tonight, and Bezrat Hashem moving forward, we're going to see many Torahs that have to do with the Brit. So we're going to start this Torah now. So everybody pay close attention. And it starts with the Pasuk. The Pasuk is from Vayikra. And the Pasuk says, V'yomar Hashem el Moshe. Hashem said to Moshe, Amor el Kohanim, speak to the Kohanim, which was obviously his brother Aaron, their children. Bnei Aaron, the children of Aaron. V'amart alehem, and say to them, Lenefesh lo itama ba'amav. Make sure that no Kohen, he acquires Tuma by being near a person among his brothers who's not alive, who's dead. We know that when it comes to the Kohanim, they have a mitzvah not to be near the dead, even amongst the Jewish people. And the reason is because they had to hold on to and to embrace and to continue to grow in the area of Kedusha. And this area of impurity was, like we're going to learn, is very intense. Comes to dead people, right? Even amongst the Jewish people. And therefore, if they're going to serve in the Beit HaMikdash, they couldn't be near them. Okay? Now, after this, he's going to bring something which is seemingly completely unrelated to this, which is something that Rabbi Nachman is very good at, that he brings different, so to speak, quotes or different parts of the Torah which are completely across the spectrum. And part of the reason he does that is because the Gemara makes very clear, and we say this in Eshit Chayil, that, and Rabbi Nachman is going to speak about it later in the Likutey Moharan, that the Torah is poor in one area and rich in another, like we say in Eshit Chayil. Meaning that the Torah is the Eshit Chayil. She is the woman of valor, and she's poor in one area and rich in another, meaning that in an area that you don't understand, the reason is because in a far-off area in the Torah, which seemingly has nothing to do with it, it's very rich with the explanation to what this is. And this is why Rabbi Nachman was very insistent that every Jewish person learns as much Torah as he can, but not in the way that most rabbis and sages say, that you should try and learn a piece as well as you can and spend as much time as you can doing that, but that you should learn a little bit of all of Torah every day. Even if it's a few minutes of everything. A few minutes of the Midrash, a few minutes of Zohar, a few minutes of Chumash, a few minutes of Tehillim, a few minutes of Mishnah, a few minutes of Musar, right? And by doing this every day, you actually finish the entire Torah. And you can do it again and again and again. And then as opposed to a person, let's say, who he's trying and he's chomping at the bit to try and understand a piece, even if he gets an understanding, he doesn't understand because it's rich in another area. Meaning, it's only going to be cleared up when he gets there. And this is very similar to life. That many of us are trying to figure out how to figure out our life. And the truth is, you just have to wait. You just have to wait till later on in life, because only then are you going to understand what's happening to you now. And that's why you have to just keep moving and to keep trying to grow no matter what's going on in your life. So therefore, he's going to bring now something that's seemingly unrelated, but through the rest of the Torah, he's going to show how they are intricately connected. And this is not a pasuk from Chumash. It's not a pasuk or a verse from the Torah, which is explicit and revealed. It is from the deepest secrets, not just of the Torah, but the deepest secrets of the Zohar. There's a section called Sifra Ditzniuta, which within the Zohar itself has the deepest secrets of the Zohar. So these are very, very deep secrets. They're very Kabbalistic. They're very hard to understand. So I'm going to read you what he writes here, what he brings. Ita Sifra Ditzniuta. It's brought from the Sefer of Tzniut, of modesty, the book in the Zohar, in Perek Bet. Min nukva de fardaska mashach rucha de chayel mshicha. Where is the life, the soul of Mashiach drawn from? How is Mashiach different from any of us? We know that Mashiach is coming here to bring redemption to the Jewish people, to bring renewal to creation, to bring the whole world to complete emunah in Hashem, and to experience peace in the world. That parnasa is going to be so prevalent, nobody's going to have to work for anything. And everybody's going to be able to get along with this fellow. What's going to cause all of these metamorphic changes? What is it about Mashiach that's different than everyone else? And the answer is that he draws his life from the highest spiritual realm, which is called Arich Anpin. There are in the main 5 spiritual, let's say, faces, okay? Or 5 spiritual systems that are constantly at play. Now, we just need to understand this because moving forward, this is going to be prevalent, especially within Hasidus, which is always dealing with Kabbalah, which is that there's always, usually it's focused always on 4 levels of reality. There's always 4 levels of existence, 4 levels of your soul, 4 levels of existence in the physical world, 4 levels of all of the spiritual and physical worlds. And then there's something called partsufim, which are systems of sfirot. There's 4 levels of that. But in truth, there's really 5. Okay, so just for a practical example, for anyone who's lost right now, we know that there's 4 letters in Hashem's name. Rabbi Nachman is going to make very clear later on that all of reality is drawn from those 4 letters in Hashem's name. They are the creator of all of reality. All life force is drawn from those places. All creation comes from those places. However, we know that according to Kabbalah and Chassidut, there's actually a higher level than those 4 letters, which is the tip of the first letter, the apex of the Yud of Hashem's name. And this is corresponding to the Keter, the crown of Hashem. And that is actually where Mashiach is going to draw his life force from. And we're going to learn in this Torah how we are able to draw our life force from there as well. Because every single one of us, like we spoke about last night, has a spark of Mashiach within us. And therefore, whatever applies to Mashiach in a very global way, applies to us in a very individual way. And that's why it's so important to learn these things. Because we all want redemption in our life. We all want to overcome our issues with Shalom Bayit, with not being able to get married, with not being able to have children, with not having healthy children, with psychological issues, emotional issues. Every single one of us has things that we need to be redeemed from. And therefore, it very much applies to every single Jew. How does Mashiach bring redemption to the world? Because every single one of us has a spark of Mashiach, like we spoke about last night. And that spark inside of us is actually exactly what's needed in order to bring your own personal redemption and actually to bring the Mashiach himself. However, there is one singular difference between Mashiach and us, which is that the soul of Mashiach is rooted in this highest level of reality. And that's why he draws his life force from there. And that's also why he struggles tremendously in his life. What is that? That's called the Keter, the crown of Hashem. Whereas most souls come from a place called the Kisei Kavod, right? That's where all the souls are of the Jewish people, which is in the sphere that's usually connected to called Bina, okay, which is the 8th sphere of the 10 sfirot. There are certain tzaddikim that are even higher than that, and they come from Chokhmah, which is the 2nd highest. But there is one soul in all of history who his soul was actually rooted in the highest of Keter, and that is the soul of Mashiach himself, the soul of David. And we're going to learn, where does he get his power from? So the Zohar says, from the nostrils of the Nukva. So like from the air, from the breath that's coming from Nukva, he's going to be receiving his life force. So everybody, if you don't understand what I'm saying right now, or you're not going to understand this next part, don't worry about it, okay? As the lesson comes and through, we're going to understand more and more. You know, as Rav Chaim Kramer has said in the past many times, learning Likutey Moharan at times can be like learning a Gemara. It's not always easy peasy to learn Rabbi Nachman's Torah, and there's reason for that. And actually the trying to figure it out itself is actually part of the benefit of it. It's actually the healing of it as well. Just like learning Gemara is very difficult, and yet by doing it, just the process of going through it is actually, like the Arizal says, what breaks the klipot. So don't worry if you don't understand right now, because as time goes on, with enough vigilance, with enough prayer to Hashem, you'll be able to understand what we're speaking about, okay? So he receives his life force from the nostrils of Nukva de Pardaska. And where is that? That's from the highest spiritual world, which is called Arich Anpin, or extended face. So Good. That's where he gets his life force from. So now we know, how is Mashiach different than us? Mashiach is deriving his life force from the nostrils of this highest level of reality, which nobody has ever accessed or touched before, which is called Keter, the crown, or it's called the apex, the crown of the Yud of Hashem's name, like when you first put the pen down, or within the terminology of the Partsufim, this is more heavy Kabbalah, that there are systems of Sfirot, and at every world there's a different system of Sfirot, meaning that the revelations of godliness within the different worlds, they combine to form different revelations of light. So obviously these are very, very heavy concepts, but simply put, the highest Partsuf is called Arich Anpin, which literally translate as extended face. So we're going to see in a moment why it has to do with face and why is it called extended. But that face, so to speak, has nostrils, so to speak. And those nostrils give forth life force. They give forth chokhmah. They give forth breath, okay? Now, as opposed to us, that when we breathe in and we breathe out, so to speak, we require just as much as we give. At that level of reality, that highest spiritual world, that highest spiritual partsuf or face, it's so elevated and so high, it doesn't require anything from down here. It only gives, very similar to Hashem. It doesn't need anything. So therefore, anything that's coming from that place is a very, very intense, high spiritual life force, and it's only giving. So what is it giving? It's giving life force from both nostrils. One of these nostrils is giving life force to all of the spiritual sfirot, which were in the face, which is not called Arch Anpin, which means long face or extended face. They're drawn down to the small face, which is called Zer Anpin, small face, okay? Within there, you have 6 sfirot that are called Chesed, Gevor, Tiferet, Netzach, Chod, and Yesod. Anybody who's not familiar with these things, don't worry about it. You don't need to be for this. I'm just trying to explain to you what is this beginning piece. And as time goes on, these things will start to become more fluent for you. And just like you can know the difference between steak and chicken, you're going to be able to know the difference between Chesed and Gevor, B'ezrat Hashem. So those 6 sfirot of Zer Anpin, they are above this world, but they're very connected to this world. This world is most connected to Nukva, which is the female aspect of reality, like we spoke about last night, which is connected to Malchut, okay? That is the last letter of Hashem's name. That's the Hey in Hashem's name. That's most connected to our world. Or as they call it in the terminology of Kabbalah, Olam Asiyah, the world of action. That there's many worlds that exist corresponding and at the same time as our world. Like, so to speak, many people think that Shemayim or heaven exists like in the future. It actually exists right now while we're here. It's just existing at a different plane of reality. And actually everything that happens up there is affecting what's going on down here. And we usually only think of one world or one heaven, so to speak, that is affecting what's happening here, if you believe in that at all. However, it's clear in Kabbalah, there's actually many worlds, and they're all affecting each other, and that's all affecting what's going on down here. And actually, whatever is happening down here is a reflection of what's going on up there. And Hashem made this entire system where everything is connected and interrelated, because this is going to be the greatness at the end, that we're going to see that it's all one, Hashem Echad. Okay? Now, as opposed to these 6 higher sfirot that are above us, from Zer Anpin, right? Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod, they all receive life force from the right nostril of this highest place. In this world, we receive from the left nostril. Malchut receives from the left nostril, okay? That left nostril is usually associated with din, not rachamim, like the higher worlds get, meaning Hashem's empathy or compassion, but judgment. What's the reason for that? The answer is because this world, we have free will. And because we have free will, we have the ability to try and connect Hashem to Hashem and to godliness, try and elevate ourselves spiritually and physically, or not to, okay? When we do that, then we mitigate din. We mitigate judgments in this world. The coronavirus is din, it's a judgment. There's no way around it. The Gemara says very clearly, if you put your hand in your pocket and you're looking for 3 coins and you have 2, there's a judgment. All the more so when you have a virus that sweeps over the whole world, this is for sure a judgment. Now, who are we to understand what that judgment is? We don't know, but there is a judgment, okay? What's that coming from? It has to do with what's going on above, and it has to do with decisions we're making down here. How do we mitigate those judgments? In the same exact way that Mashiach is going to mitigate the judgments of the entire world, we're able to mitigate those judgments as well, at a smaller level. And all of that is coming from this left nostril, okay? The left nostril has to do with, actually I'm not going to say, we'll get there in a second, okay? So now this is the introduction. If anyone is completely lost, it's completely okay. I had to do my due diligence to give you over what Rav Kramer brings on the bottom, because as time goes on, you are going to understand more and more what we just spoke about. Bezrat Hashem, with Hashem's merit, okay? But you don't need to understand anything we just said. So if you didn't, just put it in the back. Bezrat Hashem, tomorrow when you go do your Riboda, do it after tonight, and you ask Hashem, help me to understand what we spoke about tonight, Hashem should drop it on you, okay? But the Torah actually begins now. And the Torah starts like this. Ki ikar kle zeno shemashiach hu tefillah. What is this main weapon of Mashiach? What is Mashiach going to be using that's going to actually bring redemption to the entire world? That he is going to take away all violence, all hatred, all anger, all jealousy, all conflict is going to be completely abrogated. All of it is going to be nullified because of one person. What is he going to be using in order to do that? His weapon is going to be tefillah, prayer. Prayer. Rav Nachman says very clearly that whereas the nations of the world are building weapons and actually are only causing damage through their goals, only more and more and more damage through their own logic, Mashiach is going to bring redemption only through his mouth, and he's not going to have to lift his hand. So as opposed to the common understanding of the fact that Mashiach is going to be a physical warrior who is going to slay the wicked, so to speak, physically in a war of Gog and Magog, Rabbi Nachman says he's not going to have to lift one hand. He is only going to have to, and he will be overcoming every obstacle in his whole entire life, not just for the Jewish people and not just for creation, but in everything in his life. He's going to be overcoming all of it through his prayer. This is going to be his main weapon. And this is the concept of the nose. This is the concept of the nose. So how does this have to do with the nose? What does tefillah have to do with the nose? So Rabbi Nachman, he likens prayer to the nose. Why is that? Because even though we don't think this way, and this is what Rabbi Nachman's coming to teach us, and this is what we have to work on, you need to breathe. Everyone needs to breathe. If you don't breathe, you die physically. Okay, everyone knows that. And you would go to any length to make sure that you're always breathing. However, Rabbi Nachman says that what breathing is to your physical body, praying is to your soul. So therefore, you can't live without prayer. What does that mean? Your soul is going to die? Not physically, but meaning that your soul is going to go into exile. You're not going to be able to experience God consciousness because you're not praying. It's like breath to your soul. And therefore, he's saying that prayer is like the nose. This is one simple understanding of it. That just like you use your nose primarily to breathe, and through that you have life force to accomplish everything that you need to in your life, so too your soul, and specifically Mashiach, his nose is called prayer, tefillah. Like it says, so there's a pasuk in Yeshaya, And Yeshaya is constantly speaking about the days of Mashiach and explaining what Mashiach is going to be doing. In fact, the main source of what we know Mashiach is going to do and how he's going to do it comes from Yeshayahu, or Isaiah. And it says there, Ufhilati echatam lach, where Hashem is saying, for my tehillah, for my acknowledgement, for my praise, I am going to restrain my anger towards you, meaning towards the Jewish people. Now, the truth is that pasuk doesn't actually literally say that. That's how they translate it. But echatam lach actually literally means I'm plugging up my nose for you. Now, on paper, this doesn't make any sense. Why? Because Hashem is not physical. And on top of that, what does it mean that because you're praising me, I'm plugging up my nose? So the answer is what we just learned. That, so to speak, Hashem at the highest level of spiritual reality has something that's called like a nose, where his life force is coming from, where all positivity and all blessing is coming from the right side, and din, in this present state of reality, is coming from the left side. So when he's saying that I'm going to plug up my nose for you because you praise me, meaning because you're praying to me, because you're talking to me, it means I'm not going to cause din or judgments to come down to the world through the left side of my nostrils, the left side of my nose. Okay, so hopefully now we're beginning to get somewhat of an understanding, at least at a very superficial level, of why Rabbi Nachman brought that Zohar in the beginning. Umisham ikar chiyuto. This is where all of his life force is going to come from. What does that mean? The main source of his life force. His life is going to become from tefillah, from prayer. Like David HaMelech, who is the soul of Mashiach, said, tefillah le'el chayai. And Rabbi Nachman is going to explain later in another Torah, what does David mean? What does Mashiach mean when he says tefillah to the God who's alive? That's the way that they usually translate it. He actually means to my tefillah to Hashem, that is my life. Meaning, if not for that, I would be dead. I would be depressed. I would be sad. I would be scared. I would be angry. I would be confused. Now, this is a very important point. How much of us feel that we're looking for something in our life, something to change, something to improve? We're all looking to get rid of our fears, our anxieties, our sadnesses, all of these things. How does that stop? What's the end of that? And we have the most incredible kal v'chomer here. A kal v'chomer means that you have a more serious case, all the more so the other case. We have a lighter case, all the more so a more serious case. So I'm going to flip the other way. We have Mashiach, how much more so us? That Rabbi Nachman saying that if not for prayer, Mashiach is a bar nifla. He's dead. He has no life at all, not even a little bit of life. All of his life comes from his prayer. If not for that, he would be dead. And that's a very important point. How much more so us? That all of us are struggling with whatever we're struggling with in our life. That Rabbi Nachman is telling you, do you know why you're struggling so much? Because you don't have life force. You know why you don't have any life force? Because you're not talking to Hashem. Because you have a spark of Mashiach within you. And the key to your getting out of your problem is to tap into that part of you. And that part of you has no life. It only has life when you talk to Hashem. And not only that, that's where all the life comes from. That's where all life force comes from. It comes from tefillah. That all the wars that Mashiach is going to be fighting, all the spiritual wars that he's going to be fighting, and everything that he's going to conquer, and we know he's going to conquer the whole world. Hakol misham, all of it is going to come from the life force he receives from his talking to Hashem, from his tefillah, from the life force that comes to his nose, from, so to speak, Hashem's nose. Kamosh katuv. And that's why later on, Yeshaya says, and this is a very famous pasuk, V'aricho b'yirat Hashem. That Mashiach is going to be breathing Yirat Hashem. So Yira, as it's brought down in Rabbi Nachman's favorite Musar book, which is called Reshit Chochma, Yira doesn't mean I have anxiety and therefore I'm scared of Hashem. That's not what Yira is. Yira is an awe, an awe that overcomes you, a higher state of consciousness when you realize that there is nothing else besides Hashem. Nothing. That even when you're experiencing things through your family or through your friends or through your teachers or through your students or through your colleagues or through your employees, it's really all Hashem. And if you sit and meditate on that in truth, you will cease functioning because it's too awesome for the human mind to comprehend that even though everyone has free will, yet everything is only Hashem. But to be able to get to a point, and this is actually within a Jew's capability to acquire Yirat Hashem, meaning that you have this level of consciousness that you realize that everything is Hashem, that He is not just creating reality, He is orchestrating reality and everything in it. And not just that if for any moment Hashem decided not to blow life force into something, not just a person or even a creature, an animal, even a stone, even a brick, even dirt in the ground, that if Hashem was not at one moment blowing life force into that reality, it would cease to exist and vanish completely. And the fact that nothing is means that Hashem is constantly blowing life force into all those things. When you are conscientious of all of these things at one time, that's called Yira. And the normal response to that is awe. It's just awesome. It's mamish awesome. It's really awesome. Not just in the sense of, you experience something crazy, you're like, wow, that's awesome. But in the original sense of the term, then it's literally awesome. It's awe-inspiring. Like it's hard to, it's almost like when you, let's say, Lahavdil, you see a sunrise, an amazing sunrise. You go to Eretz Yisrael and you're on the mountain of Masada, and you're just sitting there and you see all of the mountains and the desert and the sky, and you almost feel like you can't move because it's just so awesome. So that is like one speck of the awesomeness of Hashem, that He is constantly creating everything at every moment. He is orchestrating everything at every moment, and He's blowing life force into everything at every moment. That is what Reshit Chochma describes as Yira, when you're conscious of all those things. Okay? Mashiach, says Yeshayahu, He is going to be destroying all the enemies of the Jewish people through His Yira, through His conscious perception of that reality that we just stated, which He is only going to get through tefillah. Meaning not only does His life force come from there, but as a result of the life force that He gets from there, He is going to acquire Yirat Hashem. And through that Yirat Hashem, and through His mouth, He, as we're going to say later, is going to be slaying the wicked with His tongue. Meaning that He is going to be destroying all darkness from this world, all anger, all sadness, all lower external fears, all secular wisdoms which are destroying and getting in the way of a Jew's ability to connect to his soul, and for all of creation to really access something which is transcendent. So whether it's even pestilence and war and violence, Mashiach is going to be destroying all of these things through His tefillah. And the reason He's going to be able to do that through His tefillah is because through His tefillah, He's going to acquire Yira. And the Yira that He's going to have is going to be coming from the highest spiritual world, which is called Adam Kadmon, or it's called Keter, right? The crown of Hashem, or it's the apex of the Yud of Hashem, but it's coming from that highest place. And He's getting all of that through tefillah. And this is the concept of the nose. By the way, we know that as opposed to Moshe Rabbeinu and Shlomo Melech, and Chassidut, it's spoken about these things, and it's actually pshat in the Torah, that Moshe, he judged with his eyes. And that Shlomo Melech, he judged with his ears. Meaning that they were leaders of the Jewish people, and they were kings. And they had to rule, not rulers like we think of rulers, that they're oppressive and that they force us to do things that are not good for us, and they have their own. No, a Jewish king has no thought of himself whatsoever. He only cares about the Jewish people, and he only cares about bringing peace and love and truth to the world. He has no ego whatsoever. That's the only way he can be a king. So Moshe and Shlomo attained those levels. Shlomo was the son of David, and Moshe Rabbeinu, we all know who Moses is, Moshe. And Shlomo, when he judged, because part of being king is to judge cases, he judged with his sense of hearing, which has to do with the sphere of Bina. This is the mother principle in Kabbalah. That is a deep intuitive sense of what is through hearing. Okay, Moshe, he judged through his eyes, through what he saw. That is a higher level. That has to do with Chokhmah. Chokhmah. Okay, that is a higher level of reality because you can see further than you can hear. However, there is something called Keter. Okay, and the sense there, which is surprising because it's higher than your eyes and higher than your ears, you would think it has something to do with what's going on up here, and it does. But in truth, it has to do with something which transcends yourself, which has to do with your sense of smell, which is very, very fascinating. Because when I went to school in psychology, they taught us that despite the fact that your ears can hear further than you can smell, and your eyes can see further than you can hear, that in truth, the opposite way, you're able to remember things further in the past. Meaning that when you see something that reminded you of something when you were younger, you can only go so far with that. But when you hear, let's say, a song or something, that you can be brought back, let's say, to your late childhood or something. But through smell, you can actually remember something from the time when you don't remember anything. And that's physically, psychologically. And we know that everything physically is a reflection of something spiritual. And that would make sense why the Kabbalistic masters and the Zohar are explaining that the highest sense, this is actually brought down in Sefer Yetzirah from 2,000 years ago, is smell. And it says that Mashiach is not going to judge through his sense of hearing or his sense of sight, but he's going to judge through a sense of smell. Now, what is it about Mashiach that he's going to be able to judge through his sense of smell? And Rabbi Nachman is going to show us later, it has to do with his purity. That his level of mastery of what we're going to call the Brit, of sexual purity. That through this area, he is going to acquire a very deep sense, not of physical smell, but of spiritual smell. And that spiritual smell is actually tefillah itself. Meaning, how is Mashiach going to be conquering and judging the world and bringing its redemption? Through his prayers. That's his smelling. And where is he going to get the power of his smell or scent from, or his prayer? It's going to come from his mastery of the Brit. And Rabbi Nachman says elsewhere that every single Jew has within him, we're going to get there, B'ezrat Hashem, Likutey Moharan, a spark of Mashiach. And your ability to access that is completely dependent on your sexual purity, to the degree that you become pure sexually. Now, tomorrow, we're going to speak more what that means practically. Now, usually when we think about sexual purity, we think about not wasting seed, right? Or not engaging in a practice that the Torah says not to physically, sexually. But the Brit is very complicated and it's very deep and there's many elements to it. And therefore, it takes a lifetime to grow in this thing, or many lifetimes. And therefore, but we understand that no matter where you're holding in it, to the degree that you are holding, to that degree your prayer is effective. So the more you are pure in the area of sexuality, the more your prayers are answered. And when you get to the point of Mashiach, that he is able to obtain complete purity in the area of his Brit, then he is going to conquer the whole world. And every single one of us is a microcosm of Mashiach because we're Jewish. And therefore, every single one of us can, at our own level, in our own sphere of influence, achieve redemption and conquering of whatever is troubling us in our lives through tefillah, which is your sense of smell. And through that sense of smell, which you can only acquire, which we're going to learn, through your purity in the area of sexuality. So with that, we're going to stop. We're going to move forward in this first section tomorrow. I know we spoke about a lot of different things today. In the beginning, it was very deep. It's okay if we didn't understand. Okay, as time goes on, B'ezrat Hashem will understand more and more. And whatever you don't understand, you should definitely pray to Hashem to understand. And sometimes you just have to wait to understand. So just remember that. And then in the beginning, just as a recap, what we're getting is that the main weapon of Mashiach, and Rav Natan brings down, is that really the main weapon of every Jew is his tefillah. That is your sense of smell. And just like Mashiach is going to remove and destroy and extract all negativity from the world through his sense of smell, meaning through his high level of prayer and through his high frequency of prayer, so too you in your own life can conquer whatever you're going through in your life. And that's why Rav Nachman said, my main mission is prayer. That even though he speaks about everything, his main mission was prayer because it's messianic, because it brings redemption to every Jew's life. And your ability to acquire that long term is going to come through your ability to become pure in the area of sexuality, which we're going to learn moving forward is not just not wasting seed, even though that itself is difficult enough, but all areas of sexuality, okay? And we'll get more clarity on all of these things moving forward. So does anybody have any questions about what we spoke about tonight so far?
So when you say, if I may, Rabbi, this is Rabbi Levi, when you said that through the smell, can you apply the moment when Yaakov meets with his both sons, Esav and when Isaac meets with both sons, Esav and Yaakov, and he smells the smell of the Gan Eden, is the same applies to that moment of situation. He is able to obtain the Reach Nekoach.
You got it. By the way, what he smelled, and we're going to speak about this, is Yaakov, which the Midrash explains he smelled like Gan Eden. But what did he smell? He smelled Kol Yaakov, the voice of Yaakov. So yes, it's very much connected to that. Anytime that they're speaking about smell in the Torah, it's referring to this highest level of spiritual consciousness, to be able to smell. So very good.
And it's also the first moment when HaKadosh Baruch Hu inserts the neshama, it inserts through the nose. So there's a gate of...
Yeah. That's actually that whole paradigm from the beginning of the Torah. Now, while many people think that the Torah is stories, it's not stories. The Zohar says very clearly, anyone who thinks of it is very foolish, okay? That all of these are very real paradigms. These are very real realities that are taking place at every moment. Anything in the Torah is always taking place, not just one time. So Hashem is always giving life to Adam through his nose. And we're learning that Adam, or Mashiach, only gets that through prayer. Like Rashi says that Hashem only created Adam, only so that he should be able to pray for all the things that he wanted. Okay? Any other questions, practical questions about how to apply what we just spoke about so far? Again, Rabbi Nachman stressed that even though he is delving into the deepest parts of creation and trying to bring them down for you, your main goal should be, how do I practically apply this to my life? Because all of these things are beautiful and they're incredible and they can get you high naturally. but then you go back to your life and you still have issues with your wife or with your kids or with your parents and with your job and with self-esteem issues. And so Rabbi Nachman wants us to take these very deep things and to practically apply them to our life. So the main focus of these questions should be, how can I take whatever I just learned tonight and do something with it? And the more that you do that and you think like that, the more you're going to be able to actually makayim, to accomplish what Rabbi Nachman is speaking about. Because the main thing is to do. because we're in the world of action. And the rectification of this world is going to come through action. And the main action is prayer, is tefillah. Any other questions?
That's what we say. Naseh, action, and nishma.
Yes, and we're going to get there. We're going to get there. So very good, Rabbi Levi. I just want to see if anyone else has any questions. Abraham, we actually did a summary already, so if you're able to just go back and check it out after the class. Any other questions? You should have questions.
Yeah. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hi, Rabbi. I guess 2 questions, but I'll stay with one for now. So Rabbi Nachman's method of learning, of just going through different areas, how can one best implement that?
Okay, very good. So I believe our very chashuv public relations manager, Aaron London, has a file. Hopefully he can send out, maybe, if he knows how to do that, to everyone here, that has Rabbi Nachman's system of learning, and you can look it over. That would be something very good and something very kedai, considering Shavuot is coming up, because it's very different than most people learn. And to do so, it takes a lot of faith. And also it is going to make you very happy. So the reason is like this. Rabbi Nachman held that the main benefit of Torah is only had when you've gone through the whole thing. Because the Torah, like life, it can only be explained once you go through the whole thing. So that sounds very daunting, especially the way that, let's say, you learn in yeshiva, or let's say you never learned in yeshiva, or just how you learned in school growing up, that you try and memorize something and understand something. And then, so Rabbi Nachman says you don't have to do that. You just have to read all of it, okay? So what does that mean practically? So that means that every day you learn a little bit of everything. So what does that mean? First off, there was one thing that Rabbi Nachman was insistent on, that every single Jew learn every single day. And this was something that he even put in his last will before he passed away. This was this important to him, was that every single Jew learns halakha every day, that he learns Jewish law every day. Now, on a simple level, obviously, if you don't know what Hashem wants from you, you're not able to do it. Okay, so that goes without saying. But according to the Arizal, and according to the major Mekubalim, to learn halakha is to separate good from bad. Because you're separating kosher from not kosher. You're separating pure from impure. So by actually learning it, you're not just knowing what it says, but the actual process of learning that actually extracts good from your life and removes the bad. And this actually is part of keeping the Brit, okay? This is something that we're going to learn later on in Likutey Moharan, that as opposed to what most people think is Shmirat Brit, which is not wasting seed, that's the higher level of the Brit, but there's a lower level of the Brit that Rabbi Nachman connects to knowing halakha. And that has to do with the fact that you are separating the good from the bad within the realm of Jewish law. So therefore, first thing is to make sure every day you learn halakha. So you're going to say to yourself, well, that already in itself, I would only have time to do that. So what it would be simply just to start with, let's say you're not privy to this learning, say you know what it says, learn one psak halakha a day. Meaning, come away with one law that you didn't learn yet about what to do that you didn't know. Well, let's say you did know, but you're going back to it. Whatever it is, what do I practically do? That's psak halakha. What can I do that Hashem wants me to do? Now, Rabbi Nachman and Rav Kramer stresses this, that obviously if you're able to do more than that, let's say you're able to learn a few halachot a day, or a couple halachot a day, and you're able to even learn the commentaries with it. So all the more so it's better, okay? But the main thing is that you learn halakha every day. And specifically from the Shulchan Aruch. Now, even though we all know that that's the code of Jewish law and that everyone follows it, still at the same time, there have been other extensions, different poskim, different Jewish codifiers who have come out with their own. But Rav Nachman was very insistent that you learn the Shulchan Aruch itself, And that the reason is because he says that it's perfect. He says that Rabbi Yosef Cairo had Ruach HaKodesh in writing it. He's not the only one who said so. And he says that literally there's not one word that's off in it. The whole thing is completely perfect. It's exactly what Hashem wants from you. And even though when you read the Shulchan Aruch and you read the laws there, it may not sound like he is knowledgeable in the areas of Kabbalah because he doesn't speak about it so much. But the truth is, he was one of the greatest Kabbalists that ever lived. And he was one of the main students of the Arizal. And the only reason he wrote the Shulchan Aruch is because his master, the Arizal, said that you are going to change the world through the Shulchan Aruch that you're going to write, through halakha. And therefore he focused all his attention because that was his Rabbi. And if not, we would never have that. We'd probably just have Kabbalistic works from him. So therefore, whenever you read a simple halakha in the Shulchan Aruch about what to do in your life, you should know that there are the deepest secrets of Kabbalah within every single Jewish law, and just to trust that, okay? And as time goes on, you'll see that more and more. So therefore, first thing is to learn halakha every day. Simply that means learn a halakha a day. And if you have more time than that, learn 2 halachot a day. And if you're able to, with those 2 halachot, to learn a commentary on it, to explain it, even better, okay? That's one thing. 2, and we're going to get there when we get to Torah Gimel of Likutey Moharan. The third Torah of Likutey Moharan, Gimel. Rabbi Nachman's going to say that there's a very deep power to learning Gemara at night. So I'm not going to speak about it now because that's the next Torah that we're going to do. But suffice it to say that learning Gemara is very important, whether you are a Litvak or whether you're a Chassid or whether you're just a Jew like everyone here. Learning Gemara is important, even if you don't connect to it, even if you don't understand it initially. The learning of it itself is very spiritually beneficial for you, and especially at night. So learn a little bit of Gemara a day. Now, what most people are going to do is they're going to say, learn a daf a day, do daf yomi. Rabbi Nachman would say, don't worry about it. Just learn a little bit, okay? Just learn a little bit more today than you learned yesterday. Maybe that for you, that is a daf because you're fluent in learning Gemara, and for you, it doesn't take so long to do that. Maybe for you, an Amud is as much as you can do. Maybe that's a half an hour for you, or an hour, or maybe that's too much for you, okay? And maybe in 15 minutes, you can do a few sentences. So that's what you do, and that's great. But the main thing is that you're doing this every day, okay? So even though it might sound like in the end, this is not a lot of learning, so you're going to see that based on the amount of subjects that you're doing, it actually is a tremendous amount of learning. It's just short amounts of everything. And in truth, you're actually able to cover an incredible amount of ground in the Torah and to understand something that people can only hope to understand by grinding their mind for a year on one Masechet. You'll be able to understand a lot more than that by going through the whole thing. Because what doesn't make sense here is just explained later on. So learn a little bit of Gemara every day. Then we have, obviously, Likutey Moharan, which, Baruch Hashem, we are all learning 4 nights a week right now, or 3 nights a week, 1 women's class, and then obviously we have the Sunday classes. But everything that I teach is just something that Rabbi Nachman teaches in Likutey Moharan. So if you come to these classes, you're yotze that, and it's very, very important that even though Rabbi Nachman has many works, and his students have many works, and they're all vitally important, and you need all of them to really go all the way. But still, there is no denying that Likutey Moharan is the magnum opus of Rabbi Nachman, and that all of his students' wisdom comes from there. And there's no way to be able to grasp the depth of all those things unless you first try and learn Likutey Moharan. And Likutey Moharan is very hard. So I'm hoping, Bezrat Hashem, part of these classes is I'm hoping I'm making this accessible to everyone to the best of my ability. I know the beginning of today was very tough. It's not always going to be that hard. I'm going to do my very best to make it simple and understandable, but it's very important that we learn Likutey Moharan, okay? So therefore, we're doing that. So thank God, you're already good there. Then on top of that, we have Chumash, right? We have a mitzvah or derabanan or deraita, depending on how you look at it. Shnai Mikra. That means that you learn the portion of Chumash that week. What is the portion of the Torah that we're working this week? So this one we don't because we have Shavuot coming up, but then we have Naso. So what you would do is, through the week, you would learn Naso. And you learn it with Rashi. Okay? So how does that work for me? For people who are more fluent in it and people who are able to do it, who have been learning a long time, I haven't been learning a long time. So it's very hard for me, and I'm very slow at reading it right now. Obviously, it's much quicker than it was a few years ago, and it's much quicker than it was a week ago. And this is what happens as time goes on. When you follow Rabbi Nachman's learning Seder, you just grow exponentially very quickly, but that's only if you're consistent every day in doing it, and you learn no matter what, which is learning b'koach. No matter how you feel and no matter what's going on in your life, you learn this little bit of everything every day, you will see that you grow leaps and bounds very, very quickly. And you're not the same person in a month from now that you are right now. So, Chumash with Rashi, that you learn, for me, that's an aliyah a day. And even that is a lot, obviously. I know that the Arizal has his own system, and in Sephardim, they learn Chok Yisrael, and they try and get Shnai Mikra down that way. However, for me, that's impossible, because even though the first 3 days are awesome, because there's only like 3 verses in the Torah that he explains with Rashi, then you're left on the 6th day doing the entire Torah portion. And I don't know what it's like for you guys on Friday. But between everything that's going on, I definitely, at my level of learning, I'm not capable of going through the whole thing like that. And the Vilna Gaon, he came up with a system of doing the Parsha every week. And he said for him, this worked the best. And this is what works best for me. And that is to learn 1 aliyah a day. And then you finish the entire Parsha that week. So for someone who's working on their Hebrew, right? So it's good to learn the Hebrew. But if you don't have time for that, so just learn the Parsha, read it in Hebrew, and then read it in English, and read the Rashi in English. And if you do that just for the Parsha, it also doesn't take very long. And if you want to become more expert in learning, so then you try and learn the Hebrew, and everybody at their own level, okay? So these are like the main things. These things that we mentioned today, and Tehillim, and to say Tehillim every day. For some people, that could be 1 parak, right? It could be 1 chapter of Tehillim. For some people, that could be 10 chapters of Tehillim. For some people, it's Tikkun Klali every day. For some people, it's to say an entire day of Tehillim. For some people, for very, very advanced Hasidim, they say the whole book of Tehillim every day. But everybody's at your own level. So while this may sound very overwhelming, this is actually the most underwhelming learning Seder, because you have no requirements in terms of how long or how much you have to learn of anything. You just have to learn a little bit of everything. And actually, this takes a lot of the pressure off. And it's very fun, because you're going and you're exploring all different areas of Torah. Now, if you have more time than that and you're able to learn a midrash a day, which again is short, and you just want to read it in English, so good, you do that. If you get to the point that you're able to learn Zohar, so Rabbi Nachman says, go for it, learn a little bit a day. So all of these things, everybody dependent on their level of Emunah, everybody dependent on their living situation, on their Parnasa situation, on their family situation, depending on how much you pray to be able to do this. But in truth, the amount of time that people, let's say, just work on 1 Gemara a day, you can do all of these things. And as the years go on, you will finish the entire Torah, which is incredible. And something that many people never have the chance to do in their whole lifetime. And which the Arizal says is one of the main reasons why people keep coming back. So therefore, whatever, we're in the final generation anyway, so hopefully it doesn't make a difference. But either way, we learned in the first chapter of Likutey Moharan that the key to being able to get your prayers answered is learning b'koach, and part of learning b'koach is to learn consistently, to learn every day, no matter how you feel, no matter what's going on with you, and with joy and enthusiasm. Part of being able to do that is not overwhelming yourself with so much of something, but to learn a little bit of everything. Okay, I did see once, there is a book that's written completely in Hebrew, where I believe a Breslover Chassid actually made an entire book that has Rabbi Nachman's whole learning Seder. You only need the book, and then you can do a little bit of literally everything every day, and it's broken up into days for the whole year. I don't know where you get that. and it's only in Hebrew, so for the majority of us, that's not feasible to do. But Bezrat Hashem, we should have the zchut that Breslau Research Institute makes more, and maybe is able to do. I know they have day by day. What am I talking about? They just came out. They're coming out with something called day by day, where they're actually every single day they have a little bit of everything from Rabbi Nachman's Sfarim. So therefore, you don't have to overwhelm yourself with one thing of Rabbi Nachman and his students' writings. Majority is Rav Natan, because he was his main student who brought down all of his writings, and his writings are essential. But with day by day, you get a little bit of everything. But I'm talking about the whole Torah, okay? Did that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. I guess it's just sometimes it gets confusing because I'm learning something and it says, no, delve into one area in particular in depth, and that's how you get the Geshmak out of the Torah. So sometimes I guess it's just a little confusing, but that was very helpful.
Right,
Thank you.
So this was another thing Rav Nachman stressed and Rav Natan stressed as well. Many people, they kind of like go with the whim, meaning I'm learning this, but now this Chag is coming up, so I'm going to go learn this, and now this Chag is going to come up, and I'm going to learn this. And then you don't end up learning anything, which I think many people have experienced, that you so to speak, you get prepared for these Chagim, which are all the time, and then you don't actually learn this whole Torah, and you wonder, like, how am I ever learning it? And the reason is because Rav Nachman, Rav Natan said, don't do that. Don't just keep going, and what you're doing, just keep learning. And through this, you're going to be able to cover a tremendous amount of ground, more than you could possibly imagine. And again, take the stress off. There's no pressure, okay? This should be a fun experience for you. If you want, you could try it out for a week, or on Shavuot, you can try it out for the night, and just to get started. And as time goes on, and everybody can do this, even if you're a Balbat, even if you're someone who works and you're in the normal working world and you have a family, you have a learning Seder, and instead of learning a lot of one thing in the morning or a lot of one thing at night, you learn a little bit of everything. Yes. Any other questions? Any other practical questions? That was a great practical question. Any other practical questions?
I got one about tefillah.
Okay, go ahead.
If you say Tehillim, would that help you daven better with your personal prayers to Hashem and your set prayers to daven Shakos Mincha Mariv? Because it has every motion in the tefillin and the Tehillim.
Yes, Tehillim is very, very beneficial. We're going to speak about Tehillim later on in the Torah. Rabbi Nachman actually says that the only way to reach your own gate, every Jew has his own unique gate in Tefillah. The only way he's able to reach his own gate is through Tehillim. And therefore, it's very, very important. And like we spoke about last night, that Tehillim is really the book of our generation, because we are all the sparks of the soul of Mashiach, and Mashiach is the one who wrote Tehillim. And therefore, for us to be able to achieve redemption in our own personal life, which we're learning comes through prayer, you have to say Tehillim. So obviously, if you go into a yeshiva and they see you saying Tehillim instead of learning, so you'll be laughed at. But part of coming close to Hashem in truth means doing whatever it takes. And Rabbi Nachman is mamash the tzaddik yisod olam. And if you follow everything he says, you will live in Gan Eden in this world even before you get there. I promise you. Anybody else? Yes, Benny.
So just practical level. How beneficial is it for a person to, whenever he's doing his hitbodah, to just stop speaking and just breathing through the nostril? Is that a certain
Yes. So the whole one of the benefits of hitbodedut is it brings you to yeshuv da'at. It brings you to a tranquil mind. Okay, and part of having a tranquil mind is breathing. Right now, Rabbi Nachman understood, and this is a big discrepancy, let's say, between Chabad and Breslov, is that when Chabad meditates, they meditate through thinking, right? Or there are different Kabbalists, and they have a lot of breathing meditations or techniques. However, Rabbi Nachman understood that for us, and especially in our generation, that especially within the area of the Brit, we are so far removed from what is necessary for us to be able to have a clear mind. Therefore, if you're going to sit there and just try and breathe, or you're going to sit there and just try and think, you're not going to be able to achieve peace of mind doing it, because your mind is going to be running, and you're not going to be able to pay attention because of the things that are going on in your life. And you think it's because of the difficulties that are taking place in your life. That's not really the reason why you're having trouble focusing. We're going to actually learn at the end of this Torah. It has to do with the fact that you're not completely shmirat habrit. And if you are, you're able to focus no matter what's going on in your life.
Thank you.
Great question, Vinny. But obviously, anything that you can do, if you are, if you're able to breathe in a way that calms you down, that's great. You should. That would be a great part of meditation. Okay. But the breathing itself is actually the speech. That's what Rabbi Nachman's saying, that the concept of breathing is the concept of tefillah. So the breathing he's speaking about is the actual talking itself. Okay. Somebody actually just said that the Breslov app came out today. That's amazing. So I mentioned this the first class that we had together. I haven't mentioned it since because I didn't know when it was going to come out. I know they've been working on this app for a while now, which is very exciting. Where Breslov Research Institute actually came out with an app that I guess we can all download Bezrat Hashem on our phones. And we're going to have Breslov rabbis, numerous different Breslov rabbis who are giving teachings on there. And you're able to access all of them through an app, which is obviously very kedai for our generation. And hopefully it's going to be very, very successful. So we should all download that. I'm definitely going to download that.
Would it be all rabbis of Likutey Moharan and all Rabbi Nachum's teachings?
So the thing is, not many people teach Likutey Moharan. I didn't even realize that until I started teaching here and looking on YouTube. There's very few rabbis who teach Likutey Moharan, and part of the reason is because it's very hard. But definitely, whatever rabbis do, I know Rabbi
Maimon.
Yeah, Rabbi Maimon, he teaches Likutey Moharan. I'm sure he'll be on the Breslov app. Rabbi Yossi Katz told me our classes are going to be on the Breslov app, so you'll be able to watch these there. And whatever else you need, hopefully you'll have everything in this one app. Any other questions before we head off?
Zaka Baruch, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other practical questions? We have a few more minutes.
That app is going to be like on Android or iPhone or both?
Yeah, everything. It's going to be like any other any other app. And I spoke to Yossi about a few weeks ago. This is pretty messianic and amazing. So I would actually delete every other app on your phone.
Wow. That's really awesome, that app.
Because it's probably getting in the way of your ability to pray. But whatever is helping you, and definitely this first app is going to help you, you should definitely be on this thing. Okay? Anybody else? Okay, so listen, tomorrow night, we're going to continue this tour. This is very important. Please, please, please come tomorrow and bring your friends, bring your male friends. This is a very, very important Torah, okay? In so many different ways. And even though that first part was very difficult with the Zohar, it's not going to be difficult like that the whole time. It's going to be more like the end of this year. And a lot of things are going to start to make sense to you as time goes on. And there's going to be a lot of revelations you're going to have about why you can't focus in your life and why you can't pay attention when you pray and why you can't get your prayers answered. A lot of very, very important things, especially for our generation, as we're trying to not only experience the global Mashiach, but redemption in our own lives. So please come tomorrow night. Wednesday will be a women's class. So any women that you know, you should ask them to come. And Thursday is Shavuot. So please, tomorrow night's our last night together. So let's try to make it count, okay? And one last thing. Next week on Wednesday night, I believe it's next week, they're having an event, BRI, and they're having a lot of the big Breslov rabbis speaking at that event. I know a lot of people are big fans of Gedali Fenster. He's going to be there, and other Breslov rabbis. There's a flyer that's going out now. So they were planning on having an amazing event at a hotel in New York, and having all of these big Breslov rabbis there, and they were actually going to bring us as well, which is which is incredible and hard to understand, hard to believe. But because of the coronavirus, they had to cancel it, and they ended up losing a lot of money doing so. And they are really trying very hard to come out with all of Likutey Halachot, and it's really the last book left that they had not translated, and it's one of the most important that there is. So therefore, they need a lot of funding, and we need that. We need that Likutey Halachot, okay? And we are really only doing these classes, not just that they're only up on YouTube for them, but we're only able to learn the Likutey Moharan because of Rav Chaim Kramer. Mamash, there is no English translation that we have besides his. So anyone who's listening to this class is listening because of him, and he's recovering, Baruch Hashem, from the coronavirus. There was good news today that he was starting to feel better, which is amazing, and that he actually said he was looking forward to Uman Rosh Hashanah this year. So B'ezrat Hashem, hopefully you guys are all praying for that as well. But we owe it to him. Anyone who's benefited at all, and he saved my life. So I'm sure many of us have had a similar experience, and continually, every day, whenever you're learning from these Svarim of Breslov, they're his. I mean, and as a Karta Tov, I know that event is like $100. It's Maaser, and you're helping literally spread the light of Rabbi Nachman to the whole world. So it's very kedai. Okay, so I highly suggest that we all do that. And that means that that Wednesday night we won't be having class, and hopefully we'll all get to attend the event and really enjoy it. So anyway, everybody have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Please be on time because there's a lot to cover. Okay? Thank you so much, guys.